Yes, indeed.
Hey, everybody.
Hey there.
Hey, Kim.
Speaking of well rested.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not feeling it yet, but it'll come.
It'll
eventually.
come.
It'll come. So did I hear you talking about, Jim? You went to Maine?
Yeah, I went to Bar Harbor and
Bar Harbor.
yeah,
My wife's favorite places.
Oh, I love it. Hiked in the national park mostly all week and very stunning. Just yeah, it's well worth seeing that part of the country. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful.
Good. I'm glad y'all were able to have a great time. So.
Yeah, it was neat. We had a good time.
We're doing the staycation thing this time. So
yeah, I do those as well. You can get rested a little quicker with staycations. Yeah, no travel.
Unless there's a long list at the house, then that's
yeah. Well, that's when you tear that up the first day.
Yeah.
Teresa might not appreciate that advice, Jim.
Pardon me?
Teresa might not appreciate that advice.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, I hope everybody is doing well and has had a good couple of weeks and had a chance to meet with everyone. Let's see who we've got here so far. We've got Jenna, Christy, and Jim. I kind of threw y'all under the bus real quick yesterday.
Saw that.
What I was doing is I said, how can I do this? And so I did the old put the names in a hat. Except I don't think it was a hat. I think it was something else. But and then just started drawing them out. So so you guys were the first two. So I hope. And what I did is whoever as you saw probably, whoever the person was that was being coached, I just went ahead and put them up for the next situation. And I think I got everybody. The only one I didn't get a chance to get on the list of actually doing coaching was Dave, but Dave has done his mentor coaching, and so I didn't think he would be as uptight about that once I got into that, and that'll just give him one more week. He has to coach me. He had to do that last week, and one more time he may go under, but you know. So Chris, you doing all right in Roanoke?
Yeah, doing good.
Y'all had plenty of rain?
Oh yes, we really have.
So is everybody around? I mean, is it cool today where you are?
Yes.
I know, Christy, I know for you and Herbert and Lorraine, y'all are around here, so it's pretty cool. I'm going, wait a minute, what happened? Didn't y'all have the 98 degrees on Saturday like we did? Oh my goodness. So well, as we let's see, the only couple of other person, Dave's not here. I haven't heard from him. Sarah is going to be with us, but she's going to be a couple of minutes late. I knew Javon had a couple of challenges the first few times we met. And so that's kind of the list, I think, of everybody of us who needs to be here. So everything work out okay for everybody, even trying to get those of you who were trying to get together to coach and that type of thing. I've heard from a couple of you, and I think that worked out okay. And any questions about any of that? Now, Chris,
are we supposed to record those?
Only if you want to.
Okay. And are we supposed to meet once a week?
No, just once, one time.
Lorraine, you're on your own.
Now, wait a minute. Let me back up.
Wow.
You're supposed to each have a chance to coach and be coached. Okay. So for some of you, it may be that you want to do one time where somebody's coached and then come back later and do another one if you want to shorten the time that you're together. I was just letting you have that option if any of that makes sense. In other words, I might run into a situation where we're going to coach for 30 to 40 minutes, but I've only got really 45 minutes for the whole day. So instead of us trying to do two things with that time period, we might do one this time and get together next time for the other person to coach. So Sarah, did you find food service for the summer? All right. All right. I knew that's an important thing when you have all those campers coming. Food service. So that may be about more important than anything else is food service. At least
It felt like we were getting a little tight. So yes.
Yeah. So anyway, one option we have in my mind for each session, what I'll do is give you someone different to coach and be coached with. That way you've got the different experiences. I did have one person say, well, do you want us to keep coaching the same person? And I really want you to have the experience of others. Now, if you come to me and say, we really have a great relationship, I hope you'll do that, you know, maybe, but I hope you'll just take the chance to kind of work with others. Now, besides the fact that I'm not really supposed to be working this week, I am so grieved by this situation in Texas. I mean, I just, you know, I mean, if I were coaching someone today, it would be very difficult for me. And just because of just I don't even know what to say. I'm tired of all this gun violence, and I'm tired of this, you know, and everybody's got a reason. I mean, I don't want to take guns away from everybody. I don't want to, I feel the same way about, you know, if you were to restrict guns too much, people still gonna get them. Just like I believe the same thing about, though I am against the how do I say this? There's so many social issues that can get you in trouble, and y'all know how that is. But I really do consider myself pro-life and not necessarily for abortion, but I really don't believe, I do believe there's always extenuating circumstances and other kinds of things like that. Just like I think, and even if we were to limit, like I think Roe versus the Supreme Court's about to do it, guess what? Abortions are still going to happen because these things are of the heart. They're not just of a but I don't want to get into all that because we all have different opinions about those kinds of things. The thing I want to have an opinion about is, can't we just get this thing under control? I mean, my gosh, I just can't take much more of it. So enough of my soapbox, but I hope y'all will forgive me if I'm distracted a little bit by both that kind of. Lorraine, it's only significant that you have mental health awareness up there behind you, because we're a pretty sick people right now, if you ask me. You know, as an overall group of people of the nation of the United States, which I'm very proud to be a part of, we're a pretty sick group of people right now, and I can only pray that the gospel and common sense would begin to take over in people's lives, because boy, it's tough right now, you know. So I hope you, I know that all of you have been grieved as well. And so I don't have any other thing to say than that it's just a tough thing to watch, you know, and all those kinds of things. So so let's jump in. I mean, let's get into this a little bit. I sent you the list yesterday with the ideas of how is there anybody need to switch around with things? And I thought, who's that? Lorraine, you do?
Right. Yeah. The 13th is the one day that I won't be in session.
I just knew as I put some of these dates down, you know, that I was going to run into that because of the time of the. So can somebody switch with, let's see. You know what? Let's do this, and I'll bring up the list. And at the end, we'll just take a real quick look at the list and see where we need to change and who might be willing to change with some different people and some other kind. Because the one thing I don't have that I haven't asked you for per se is a list that says when you can be here and when you can't. You know, that I should have done that in order to have done that list more correctly, but we'll work on from there. All right, so let's remember why we're here. We're going to have an opportunity to experience coaching, and those of us who are not coaching will just be. I encourage you to listen with the ears of a what I am learning about coaching, even as I listen. Learn and see and find the ways to encourage the person who is coaching, as we talked about last time, as well as give some helpful insights to them as we get through. So those of us who are observers have an important role to kind of play in this situation. The one thing we don't have a role of is to be a listener for telling the person who's being coached, here's what they ought to do. All right. And so, so our intent is to kind of stay focused on what the coach does, find ways to encourage, especially think about the competencies, the core competencies. That's what, for each of you, when I send an evaluation, well, you should have seen the evaluation I sent to Ken Kessler after last times. I did say I was going to send that to you and I never did, but just, allow some good things to take place here. We're going to let Christy coach and Jim be coached. Jim, you got a topic to be coached on and that kind of thing?
I think so. Veronica and I met yesterday, and she expertly navigated me through one issue, and I'm looking for Christy to take me through the next. I'm going to be ready to go after today.
All right. Well, listen, some people say, I get the question sometimes, I don't know what to be, man, we do so many of these. What am I going to be coached around? I have yet to not had a topic to be coached on, so if there's ever an issue where you're not sure and you need somebody to coach, just call me, because I've always got something that I'm working on that I need some coaching around. And I think once most of us spend some time being coached, we understand that, and we understand there's always something going on in our life or in our journey that we can be coached on. Christy, any questions from your end as far as coaching is concerned? Anything you want us to be aware of, sensitive to, things you're working on that you want us to kind of pay attention to as you're going through this a little bit, or anything that would be helpful?
I am working on all of it, Ken. So
Me and you both,
No, yes, absolutely. No, this is great. I do have a hard stop at 3 because I'm in a class then. So
hey, is that the 504 class? Good. You got all your materials and everything?
Oh, that is a fantastic looking class. The first class and the assignment were just amazing. So everybody, if you haven't taken 504 neuroscience and coaching, I'm telling you,
it's a good class.
Yeah, for real. It is. I mean, learning a ton already. So, okay. 25 minutes, Ken, is that right?
Yeah, around 25, 30 minutes. Let me ask you what would be the most helpful to you. One of the things I can do is when we've gone about 20, 25 minutes, I can pop back up, or what would be the most helpful? You got your clock? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, all right. So
but if I somehow miss it, please pop back up.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. Well, I'll pop up, but I won't say anything. I'll just pop up, and that would just give you a hint. Hey, we're getting close. So, and I know especially if you have a hard stop, I've got a hard stop too. It's called vacation. So,
man, I want your hard stop.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. All right. Have fun. We'll talk in a little bit.
Thank you, Ken. Jim, hey, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm fine. I hope you are.
Good. Yeah, it's a good day. It sounds like you had some great time away recently. Some hiking.
I did. Yep, in Maine, and always wanted to get up there, and it was wonderful.
That's great. Did you have the super hot weather, or was it not so bad?
No, when it was 90 something here, it hardly ever got to 65 there.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow,
Cocoa and
good for you.
refreshments. Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Good. Well, it sounds like you picked exactly the right days to go. You escaped the heat. So, Jim, I'm really glad to get this time with you today. Just a couple of things right off the top that I would say about our time. First of all, I just want to reassure you that everything we talk about today is confidential. It's between you and I, and there's only one way that I would break confidence, and that is probably an obvious one to you. But if I think you're going to hurt yourself or anyone else, I'm going to look to get you help. Okay. But other than that, what's said here stays here. The other thing I want to tell you is I know we're on Zoom, so you can't really see my hand, but if you do, you'll see a pen. I am a note taker, and I do that so I can really focus my listening on you. But those notes are just for me, and they're to help me be more effective with you. So are you okay with that if I take a few notes as we go?
Absolutely. That'll be
Okay.
wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, tell me as we get started today, what's on your mind? What would you like to talk about?
Okay. Well, what I jotted down for the day was kind of about church process and what we're one thing we're attempting here at the church I'm at Fairview. And so what I'm working through is kind of this: how do I navigate the change process in the congregation as we transition? And well, we started before COVID, but during, especially after COVID, from being an attractional church to a missional vision type church. And, just how to navigate that change, which is a big heart change. It's a big mind change for everyone. And just to kind of how do I maneuver with what is here and I know is to come, reactivity and sabotage and keeping morale up, encouraging, and just what's the best way to, as we do new things and have new ideas, to navigate the church through.
Wow. Well, that's a huge topic, Jim, and probably one that's on the mind of most pastors right now. So I first just want to begin by saying, I think the words you're saying are words any pastor might be saying to me right now. So I know you're not alone in this. Let's narrow it just a bit. What would you like to walk away with today? How would you call this time successful?
Well, I think it would be successful if I, maybe could identify a few positive ways to function when the heat turns up.
Wow.
And what is the healthy way for me to be thinking, and how does that manifest itself in function, whether it's in a council group or a team meeting or a discussion group, when we're just talking about different, doing things differently.
Okay.
How am I feeling? How am I functioning in front of others?
Yeah. Well, I actually think what you just said is a great place to start. How are you feeling? Tell me what rises up in you when you think about the change that's in front of you for the church. How are you feeling?
Well, I have seen some positive things. I think as I listen to where some other churches are and pastors are, there's a lot of positives where we are. I think in some ways we're ahead of the game or on par. And then many, I guess what can get me down the quickest probably is being slowed by negativity and being slowed by those who you sense just have a lack of trust, or wanting to, or thinking they really, what their goal is to go back to the way things were, which I fully believe is not going to happen. And so I guess that's where I feel most anxious is when, I have to be in that setting with people that get really emotionally anxious, and it comes out, and we've got to really work through that.
Yeah, for sure. And there is a lot of anxiety associated with change. So I mean, you're hitting on the key points. So you said something interesting. You said it makes you anxious when you're in the room with people that want to go back to where you were because you're sure that's not going to happen. How are you sure? Tell me more about that.
Well, I think just not just me just out there reading the tea leaves on my own, but as far as what I've tried to listen to from national consultants that are dealing with hundreds of churches throughout the country,
right?
Kind of attending some dialogues like this to see where,
right.
And then just observation to know that we have maybe 55-60% of in-person, let's just say, worship of where we were, and in just seeing that our culture and our town and our city, how much church, finding a church or just looking for a church because there's a church on the corner, or them researching a congregation to attend, and then we attract them to attend with a great program or good smoke and mirrors worship is going to work. I don't see that happening over the last 2 years. So I think it's experience, observation, a little research, and dialoguing with others.
Experience, observation, a little research, and dialoguing with others. Well, it sounds like you've done your homework, right?
It's an ongoing homework, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's true for all churches at this time. It is ongoing homework. You're exactly right. So tell me, you mentioned that you want to identify some strategies to help you when the heat turns up. I wonder, Jim, what everybody has a go-to when the heat turns up. What do you think is yours? How would you describe yourself when things get escalated?
Well, I try, if I can do it quick enough. I think I try to remember the 3 points of self-differentiation. I try to, first of all, regulate myself, and try to get in somewhat aware of my level of whatever it is, frustration, impatience, and be aware of that. And after that, I try to prepare before a session, but if I can self-regulate, then I try to go back and try better to clearly define myself to the group or to the person, describing, kind of what I'm trying to communicate, why, and why I'm communicating this based on my values and principles that I have right now. And then I try to follow through with that person or group afterwards to figure out a way to, all right, how am I going to stay connected with that person outside of this meeting? And probably looking at the most agitated person first. When's the first time I can get with them and have a cup of coffee or talk about a ball game or about family, but stay connected to make sure I know and they know that we can have differences and talk things out, but it's not going to affect the overall relationship. So that's kind of what I'm trying to process during those moments.
Well, it must feel good to be able to rattle off the points of self-differentiation like that, Jim. You are, your self-awareness is certainly quite high to be able to know those strategies already coming in. So tell me, which of those is hardest for you?
Well, I think, being hard on myself after the fact. And so, after the meeting, getting home or, the next day or two,
Yeah.
trying to go through those three things and saying, all right, how would I grade myself on that? And, and being able to do that and let go and not ruminate on it where it overtakes my thinking and, kind of becomes paralyzing from taking the next steps forward or doing something else. So I think a lot of it may be just being very critical about myself and where on the scale am I functioning in those goals that I have. Sometimes I walk away and said, okay, I did the best I could there. And other times I say, oh man, I really shouldn't have hit that guy, no, I'm just kidding. But I really shouldn't have exploded like that or said that. And
Right.
So I think it's more afterwards and, and that self-evaluation and being critical and hard on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably true again across the board for all of us. When we're in hard situations, we leave and think about, how did I just manage that? And was that what I hoped it would be? So if you, Jim, were to travel forward to the next high stakes meeting where you've got people in the room who are not coming along on what you're saying, who are real dug in, and it's getting escalated, what would you hope you would do? What are you doing in that moment? That's when you get home and you reflect on it, you just think, wow, that was it. I hit it. I hit a home run there. What did it look like?
Well, I think for me, not having a peace, but everybody being at peace with each other. But I think one thing I think would be helpful first is that we left the meeting and the way I functioned and the way I reacted and the way I said it in my presence was, if you think of an electricity transformer, if things got up to 220, I helped things at least get down to 110. Wow. That somehow I was a person in the room that helped lower the anxiousness. And I wasn't the person in the room that threw gas on it and made things worse. So that's a win, because I think just the level when there's high anxiety, there's no creative thinking. Yeah. And so if I can say, well, the anxiety was lowered somehow during the meeting, and that'll be the second thing. We had a couple of creative thoughts that came out of this, that we didn't get stuck, complaining, blaming, shaming, but we actually got to the point where, what are some creative solutions now? We don't all agree, but what are some creative solutions we can think about before we get together again?
Sure.
And I think those two things go together.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's interesting. So you mentioned, Jim, your kind of post-game analysis, right? And we all have that post-game analysis. What is your pre-game look like before you head into that meeting?
Yeah.
What does your prep look like when you're at your best?
At my best. Well, I think at my best, I try to go in, like I said, with a very clear idea of how to explain or how to define what vision or what direction or what, not problem, but what challenge that we're going to talk about. And not only to be able to define that, but to be able to define, hey, you know, here's where I am with this and why, you know, out of who I am and out of who you've called me to be here. And I always think somehow that's a good start and gets the anxiousness in the room down a little bit, is how well I define myself and why, and answer some of those questions that might pop up. Then if I can think of a good joke, that's always good too. You know,
a good joke can go a long way, can't it?
when people are laughing, they're thinking out of the front part of their brain. So you know, if we can break the seriousness of it, see more playfulness than seriousness. That's a good sign.
That is a good sign. So how do you get to the place where you can explain or define your vision and your direction?
Before the meeting.
Yes. How do you do that?
I need to make sure in the busyness of other things that I need to get done, I've got to carve out time just to think and be quiet and then jot down ideas. And I think making priority to do that is difficult sometimes with the time that's demanded, that people want to see me and other things that I have to do, is to remember the importance of carving out that prep time.
Yeah, that's hugely important, Jim. I think you're hitting on a big idea here when it comes to your preparation. You know, I recently heard that for every hour we spend in the meeting, we ought to have 1 hour of prep.
Yeah. I think if I could, you know, make goals to do that, is to know that, you know, just don't let a meeting not sneak up on you, but you know it's coming, but there ain't nothing you can do about it. But to do more preparation than worrying about it would go a lot further.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So for you, does it work better to do that just before the meeting, or do you do better with a little bit of space between? Like, do you do better if you do it the day before and you sleep on it?
I guess for a big meeting like we're talking about, I probably live with it for a while. But but even I've found it more helpful if I can get clear meetings and clear things, even if I have 15 minutes just to refocus.
Oh, so right before the meeting. Okay.
Yeah, take some, take some deep breaths and just go over in my mind the purpose in the meeting and the meaning and preparing myself. I think I'm preparing myself to be a little calmer.
Yeah.
And instead of just rushing from, all right, for one example, I stopped having some very important meetings. Like we used to try to cram everything on Sunday. And instead of just running in from worship, I said, let's meet on Tuesdays. Even though I don't like another night, but I found it better than just rushing from one, high intensity meeting or activity to another. So yeah. So just some time to focus a little bit.
Okay. I completely agree, Jim. Completely agree. Do you drink hot tea or only coffee? What's your hot drink of choice?
Warm bourbon.
Oh boy.
No, I'm just kidding. No, probably, in the morning coffee, but other than that, just a water, or if there's a Diet Coke around, or something like that, I might drink that.
I'm asking because one of my favorite ways to think about prep for a meeting is what happens with brewing coffee or steeping tea. So I like to think about it well, really like steeping a good glass of tea. That's probably my favorite analogy. So if you take that hot tea bag and you pour hot water over it and then you drink it right away, it's not so fabulous, right? But if you let it sit for a bit and then you drink it, you've got a good strong cup of tea. It's got the flavors, it's there. It sounds to me, as you're describing your process, like you're at your best when you've steeped on it a bit and you're bringing some pretty full flavors into a meeting. You're pretty well developed in what you're bringing to the table. So we've talked about a couple of key strategies. I'm wondering, out of this time, if you were going to pick a few things you may do differently, what you might pull to the top. I've got some ideas, but I'd like to hear from you what you're hearing rise to the top.
Yeah. Well, what I was hearing and really thinking in my own mind during, as we talked was, is just to be very intentional about preparing.
Yes.
For especially a very important meeting, or where I know there's going to be some engaging discussion. So spending time putting some things down on paper, which is not sometimes my go-to. Sure. Sometimes I do things, all from my head, and but write some things down, and then to make sure I take 10 or 15 minutes for just some personal calming and just getting ready to be that presence I want to be in the meeting. Yeah,
that's great. That sounds to me like a really tremendous strategy. And I think it would be a difference maker for you. One of the things I see repeatedly, Jim, is that gifted communicators, and oftentimes pastors fall into this category, can think well enough on their feet that preparation feels optional. But what happens when we're in the midst of change is without that grounding time to prepare, right? We can get sidelined by things. Emotions are high, and that preparation always yields fruit in my experience. So again, I heard you say, be more intentional about my preparation, put things on paper, and spend 10 to 15 minutes for some personal calming. I like that word, before heading into a meeting. So it sounds to me like we've identified a few possible ways to function when the heat turns up, and thought together about some healthy ways to be thinking and moving toward this change. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about together? And if not, I've got one last question for you, but anything else?
I don't think today, I think those three things would, if I remember those and put them into practice, will greatly help.
Well, Jim, it's all about that second one. You got to put it down on paper. So you just need to whip out some paper.
I haven't written it down yet.
That's right. That's right. So a question for you as we close our time, Jim, I am wondering, who might you share this learning with that will help you, that would ground you in this, that would benefit from knowing where you are? Who might you want to share this with in your life?
I do have I've got several little groups that I meet with, and I've got a good group of other pastors that are in my church that are retired that I meet with, and they do help me. They listen well and are good reminders to ask me how things are, and to kind of be reminders of some things. If I ask them to remind me, or am I doing some things, they would be good at that.
Okay, fantastic. And when do you meet with them next?
Thursday mornings.
So might this be a conversation for you to share on Thursday morning?
Yeah, if we have time, it may be good.
Awesome. Great, Jim. Well, thank you so much for talking honestly with me about this challenge and being open to just kind of diving into it with me. I learned a lot from talking with you, and I'm really eager to hear how this goes when we connect again. Okay?
Me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you have a great day.
You too.
All right, Ken.
Here I am. Here I am. Y'all did great on time and great session. Great work together and that kind of thing. Christy, how'd you feel about it?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Like we found a pretty good rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jim was gracious to me in defining what he wanted his outcome to be pretty clearly. And I felt like we were able to manage to that.
That's always helpful when you get that person to define it clearly and that kind of thing. So
he set me up for success.
Yeah. And that's the kind of client you want, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It's exactly that kind. Jim, what were you experiencing? What were you feeling as you went through the experience?
Felt like, Christy was a very attentive listener, that she was hearing what I was saying and understood, affirming. I think a big thing is not that I'm not the, a little bit of normalcy. Maybe I'm not the only one in this boat, and that's helpful. And had some good clarifying questions, and you could, knowing where the direction she was heading was really, heading towards some actual steps that could be taken. So, and very comfortable.
Yeah.
Very relaxed in the the conversation.
Good, Jim. Yeah, that's great. What about for others of you? What'd you see? What would you encourage, and go from there?
Well, I think she opened up well in setting ground rules, just, clarifying, her role, how she's going to conduct, getting permission, to take the notes. And so and it made clear
that was very well handled. Yeah.
Interesting. That was exactly what I was thinking about mentioning as well.
Well, one of the things that she modeled well for all of us, and just to remind you, you don't have to do this with everybody. A lot of times you can do the confidentiality conversation in a initial conversation if you're going to have that with somebody over, several weeks or several sessions or that kind of thing. But when you are doing your recording for ICF, she modeled well what you need to do, and that's both acknowledge the confidentiality, and also the idea of taking notes, or what I'm going to do with the notes, or some of those kind of things. That's part of that agreement kind of aspect. Christy, that's where I thought you handled extremely well. Both what you were showing is acknowledging the values and the ethics that ICF shows, but and which is that first competency, but also that third one around maintaining agreements, because that's that confidentiality piece that just has to show up. And I would just say that to all of you, because I know I run into this where people say, well, I've dealt with that with my client, when we got started, and so I didn't put it in the recording. For the recording, you've got to say it, even if you had this client and y'all have had confidentiality understandings for months. Make sure that in your recording that you acknowledge that this is like a one-off session, because it is the way of acknowledging that sense of maintaining agreement, that you're keeping that confidentiality going. So thank you, Christy, for modeling that for us and that type of thing. But I think this is true for most of us. When I have a regular conversation with somebody and we've set up an agreement, I usually do that in the agreement, and usually do that in a initial session. And I don't ever, unless something comes up, don't mention a whole lot of confidentiality after that. I don't know if that's true for you, the rest of you, or not, but that's just me, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just for ICF purposes, just make sure you state it. All right. Make sense? All right. Other comments? Thank you, Herbert.
I love Christy's conversational style.
She's and Christy, you have a great like Lorraine was saying, great conversational style, great ability of just connecting well with whoever you're working with. And that's such a positive. So,
Thank you.
yeah, good. Another great example of that and things. So Lorraine, thank you for sharing that. Somebody else?
I was going to say similar, and nothing about that felt canned. And I know my first a couple times being coached as a recipient felt very, it just felt like my coach was very to stick to the idea of coaching and not to over, stretch or anything. It always felt canned, but very conversational and comfortable, I think were the words I've heard mentioned already.
Yeah.
And then I thought you did a really good job of being in that space as a shared experience without taking it over. So for example, I really loved the imagery you used about the hot beverage and using that to kind of draw a point. I imagine based on your own experience and background, you could have taken over at that point and said, well, here's 15 things I learned from these situations, but you really I just thought you navigated that really well.
Well, yeah. And I thought what you did real well that is made an analogy out of it.
Yeah.
Because when you first, and this is just me, now this has nothing to do with Jim, this is just me. When I first heard you say that, I thought, oh, she's going to tell me I need to have a beverage of tea or coffee before I have that meeting, or that kind of thing. And
I thought that at first, but then I caught on pretty quick where she was going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what she did well. Is she explained well what she was trying to do was use an analogy and that kind of thing. And I thought that was well done to try to get the point of seeping or steeping, not seeping, steeping or or some of the other kind of things. So somebody else.
I thought the last question was great too. Just establishing some form of accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I forget to do that sometimes.
A lot of us do, Veronica. It's not just you and Christy. That's another kudos from my point of view, because I was already writing down when we need to get somebody to help him hold him accountable, and then whap, there it was. There the question was at the end. So that was that was a great kind of piece to kind of help him think through a little bit in terms of where he was going with that and that kind of thing, so.
And you'll be happy to know that group of pastors from his church is very, very willing to tell him what to do.
I bet so.
Hold him accountable.
Yeah. I was sitting there while he was answering that thing. But isn't it good for Jim to have one of those pastors sitting right here on this call,
That's right.
listening to this confidential conversation about this
Can't
group
wait.
Of people that he
Can't wait for tomorrow morning. But
Yeah.
Jim,
That
I'm not
was,
pulling out the warm
That
water.
was all fictional though, Aaron.
Yeah.
Can I say something about that, Ken?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to offer to the group the reason that I did that. I actually just learned it in the neuroscience class. And there are 4 things that make learning stick. And one of them is generation.
That's right.
And so in generation, one of the ways to move something forward is to make a social connection. So asking who might you tell about this actually helps the learner solidify the learning so that they can build a connection.
Yeah.
And the win was a suggestion in the article that was assigned. So literally that's the first time I've done it, but I'm going to start doing it every coaching session because I feel like it's a really good way to end the time.
Well, and there's a couple of great ways to do that, because just as you did it is a great one that you learn from that sticking point idea of the learning as you share it with somebody else. The other that's significant for coaching is, remember, a big piece that we are trying to encourage people to do is create accountability structures around them, because we know that a lot of times when we make commitments and if we don't have somebody come alongside of us to help us, what do? We just never do it.
Yeah.
And so having that conversation around that can be very important. And some of those kind of things. So what I find for most of us, Veronica, you were making that comment about, doing something like that. For a lot of us, probably the piece that's the hardest for us as coaches at times is that facilitating growth competency, where we really are taking the time to help them plan out what they're going to do. You know, I know for a lot of the coaching sessions I have done at times, just to give you an illustration of this, is somebody will say, well, I'm going to spend time, using gyms as an example, I'm going to spend time preparing before the meeting, you know, and then we leave it there. Oh, great.
Yeah.
You've got an action. You've got an action that you're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes before the meeting preparing. Well, a great thing to do really is to, as Christy was doing and others, is to talk about, all right, so what does that look like? You know, how are you going to remind yourself of this importance? You know, what are that 10 to 15 minutes going to look like, to where you're really helping them plan what it's going to look like in their following through with this particular piece. Because a lot of times, if you just come up with the idea, most of us will not take the time, unless it's just really, you know, we're committed to it 10 out of 10. We're not necessarily committed to writing out and making sure that we're carrying out the plans and some of those kind of things. So that's a helpful piece that we can take as a coach. Christy, I just think, you know, you do such an excellent job with coaching, and with everything. A couple things to watch. One is, and I am notorious for this, so this is how I can say this: watch stacking questions.
Yeah. I heard myself do it. Yeah.
And when you are as expressive as you are in terms of things, it's a natural thing to do, because I'm an external processor and talking. I just do it a lot of times, but that's just something to be aware of. That's something that I get some conversations around a lot of times that were very, you know, that are important. I just love the way you followed up with most of the questions you did. You had a couple of times that you and this is kind of hard, because it may have been the right moment. Remember, I talk about the difference a lot of times. This is for all of you, not just for Christy, but how hard it is sometimes to stay in the coach mode and not use our own experience to kind of pick into and speak into their particular story. There was one time that you got real close to giving him a couple of options rather than letting him come up with the options.
Yeah.
I thought I had written down that time it was, but I guess I didn't. It was kind of one of the, it wasn't in fact, I think, Jim, you even made a response to it. It was something about the preparation or something, because you gave him two options. Would you do it this way, or would you do it that way?
Oh, okay.
I'm not even sure you realized you did it.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I thought you were talking about the end. I know at the end, I said, I have some ideas, but I have some things written down, but I'd love to hear your ideas first.
Oh yeah.
And then I thought, was that too directive?
No,
okay.
No,
okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I think that was an appropriate thing. The thing I was saying, this is where I'm saying, I'm not sure I would say this was a problem. It was just something to be aware of.
Yeah.
He was working through something, and when you asked him a question, it was the way you responded to, would you do it this way, or would you do it this way? And so the question ended up being a choice, rather than open-ended, you know, or that
watch back. Yeah. Thank you.
I think again, we all do it. Just wanted to kind of, I just noticed that and that kind of thing. But again, I love your playfulness, your conversation, just as Sarah said, just your conversation that flew so easily through this thing and that kind of thing. You will have no problem when you do get to the ACC, meeting the elements of the ACC without any problem. But we'll continue to talk about it. Anybody else? Anybody else got any comments or things like that?
I did note that she shared, or she summarized for him, and it may have been better for him to summarize for himself.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that is, because I think I did I may have noticed the same thing, some note I made down here that, and by the way, I've had a couple of people coach me already from our group. That's a constant thing. is that what we do sometimes is we do the summarizing rather than letting them do the summarizing of what they committed to or some of those kind of things. So Herbert, that's a good point in things.
I was the one taking notes and Jim was not taking any notes.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I knew I had his specifics, but I didn't know if he would remember his specifics. So
yeah, and
you're right. That's a good point.
And that's the thing to remember is that sometimes, especially when we do take notes, we do have those things down. And what we do a lot of times is go back and review our notes.
Yeah.
And as we're reviewing our notes, we're talking out loud about what we're reviewing.
Yeah.
And what it's better to do is say, all right, well, I've got some things. So what are you taking out of this that you're going to follow up and do in some of those kind of things? And then if he says, well, let's see, gosh, let me think about this. Well, you can even say, well, look at can I share with you what I have in my notes? It could be a reminder, but it's giving them time to kind of reflect a little bit more on what's happening, and that kind of thing. There was one time you did a good thing too about saying something about him not taking notes.
Oh yeah, I said just write it down. Do your second thing and write it down.
yeah. And maybe a question out of that is, so what do you need to do to be prepared, or what do you need to do to get ready, or that kind of thing. And some of those kind of things. So
if I have a challenge in coaching, it's that I can quickly put on the consultant hat and be directive, and so I have to work nonstop to not do that, literally nonstop.
I think it's a big one for all of us, in terms of things, especially for those of us who've come out of the preaching or pastoring world that has taught us to do that. Right? Is that a fair thing to say, guys and ladies? That's what we've learned to do. And so there's some unlearning that we are doing even in the midst of it. And by the way, it could be that we've got some other roles where we need to do that. So it creates this challenge in us. Well, thank you. Thanks to all of you. And I will send out in the morning. Gosh, I got to take some more of my vacation time, do some administrative work. No, I'm teasing. I will send out in the morning the assignments for the next 2 weeks, right? And I think, Sarah, you're the only one that I'm not right now because you're loaded. I'm not sending assignments to. I think everybody else I am. So, all right. Which does mean, by the way, that one of you will get me. Dave Pepler got me last time. And so what I just had him coach me. I didn't really, he's always worried he doesn't have enough things to be coached about. I laugh at him when he says that. But and if y'all have him, just tell him if he has any problems, just say Ken's laughing right now. So, all right. Well, y'all take care. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. June wait a minute, Christy. I know you got it. Probably most everybody's got to go. Lorraine, you said you can't do July 13th. Did anybody else have a time? Christy, if you got to go. Because I know you've got that other class. So did y'all see it? Do you need to look at it some more and then tell me? Let's do this. July the 13th. I know if you've got a problem with the date, send it to me. And I'll do some working around the schedule. I may have to contact some of you and say, let's reschedule. I need to reschedule this and work from there. Okay.
Hey, Ken?
Yeah.
Or maybe you could just switch me and Ray, like have me be the person being coached on the 13th and then have me be the coach on the 27th and then she be the person being coached on the 27th.
Yeah. I'll figure I'll do some. That's a great idea, Veronica.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying I need to do some thinking rather than just and I don't have my email up right now where I can just throw it up and we can put it up to take a look at it. But I just wanted to check with anybody else. If Lorraine's the only one, that will be an easy switch. If there's others of you I need to switch around, let me know and we'll work from there. All right.
Sounds good.
Blessings to you all. Have a great rest of the week. Have a great Memorial Day. And we'll look forward to seeing you in June. Blessings.
Take
All
care.
right.
Thanks.
Care,
Bye-bye.
everybody.